E3 2016, Sony's press conference. A great press conference that was about to turn into something way better. Sony pulled out the big guns this year and showed off upcoming games like God of War, Days Gone, Horizon Zero Dawn, Detroit Become Human, and even something nobody expected. A black screen was met with the text "Before Kitchen." As we go through the announcement, we see the setting of the old house soon met with the television and an old videotape. We see flashes of gameplay from the game, as well as from its demo, to soon be met with the best introduction to any video game, period. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. A release date of January 24th, 2017, and a playable demo available that night for PlayStation users. After seeing this, I was fully on board. While I still hated the concept of horror, this gameplay intrigued me so much that I was persuaded by the visuals alone. I had to have this upcoming title. And when I got it, it turned into my favorite horror game ever. This is my review of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Resident Evil 7 is a horror video game developed by Capcom and directed by Koshi Nakaishi, known for his work on the Resident Evil Revelations series. It calls back to the classic horror style of past Resident Evil games, instead of the most recent action-centered games like Resident Evil 5 and definitely Resident Evil 6. Our main protagonist is Ethan Winters. He receives a message from his wife, Mia Winters, who's been missing for 3 years, telling him to come get her from an estate in Dulvey, Louisiana. But things don't go as planned. Soon Ethan finds himself trapped on the estate by the Baker family, a Louisiana family infected with a mysterious E-series virus, and guided by a little girl named Evelyn. Having to scavenge the house to stay alive and fight off the Baker family to escape, Ethan's rescue mission might take him a little longer than he thought. The story in this game is nothing to scoff at. While short and sweet with a little twist, it presents the characters in a phenomenal way and ties the Resident Evil universe in more ways than one. While Ethan Winters can be a bit of a blank slate with the suggested immersion of feeling like you're the one in control, his dialogue just makes it feel like you're watching the events through a window. The Baker family makes an incredible performance. You really feel like the actors gave it their all when it comes to these roles. The father, Jack Baker, acts like the proper brute who can't die but lets a bit of his crazy side get to him. Margaret acts like a crazy mother who, if you don't do what you're told, more trouble is going to happen to you than just being sent to your room. Lucas perfectly portrays the insanely smart yet completely psychotic young adult in a fantastic manner. Zoe's character was a decent role, and Evelyn is a sweet little girl. Oh, excuse me. Evelyn is a sweet little, bioweapon that just wants a family, finding it in the Baker family, who succumbs to her powers, bringing the worst out of them. These characters drive the story along in a nice pace, and they all have terrific, if not terrifying, moments. And all of this works along with the visuals to create a setting that sometimes is a little too real. Have you ever walked around your house and seen a shadow of yourself through the light coming in from the window? Because that can definitely happen in this game. Capcom used their new Resident Evil, or RE, engine to the limit in order to create a setting that sometimes is a little too real. The settings in Resident Evil 7 are glorious, each showing what they want to communicate with a nice polish, or in this case, a molded cover finish. From the old house to the salt mines, it feels like you're exploring the area for yourself. The old house and the main house really make you feel like you're in an older home. The areas are cramped and the hallways are tight in order to really give off that older vibe. Honestly, with living in an older home, I find it too realistic. But hey, if you need the space...
You wasted your time!
You could always innovate a little bit, I guess. Parts of the environment are interactable and change depending on your actions or just with the plot. If you cut off Jack as he's chasing you in the beginning of the game and leave him in the kitchen, he'll find a faster way to get to you, and much more. If he can break it, you bet he will in order to get to you. Or, later in the game, when you go back through the house to find a couple of certain key items, you'll be met with a hallway that looks vaguely familiar but seems to have a bit of a mold infestation. Even the environments that don't change still have impeccable visuals that barely look fake. The beginning of the game's setting of the Louisiana swamp, the outside of the house, even the boathouse is intense with visuals really representing the takeover and infestation of the E-series virus. Moving away from environments, the textures of the characters and creatures of the game are also something to see. All the characters and their details have been handcrafted to fit the aesthetic of the game, as well as really drive the character's personality and characteristics home. From Jack's horrifying regeneration ability to Margaret's bugs, you cannot deny the gross yet disgustingly vivid visuals. While Resident Evil games like 2 and 4 carry diverse enemies with different styles of combat, Resident Evil 7 only has the Molded. The Molded carry a generic design with a limited moveset. The Four-Legged show a little more diversity with their faster paced moveset, but overall, it doesn't really add enough to amount to past Resident Evil enemies. However, it's easy to note their literal blend into the environment and aesthetic. Lastly, while you can't fully see the body of Ethan while you're playing, you get to see his hands constantly, along with his feet once in a while. And I gotta admit, it's nice to see someone with an appreciation for loafers. His hands are always in motion. Each action performed in the game is shown through this. Whether it's healing by dumping first aid onto your left hand, leaving it looking glossy, to blocking by putting up your hands, to injecting steroids and stabilizers found throughout the game, to even putting your hand on a wall or door if it gets too close. They thought of everything in order to immerse the player into the gameplay and make it really feel like they're experiencing the terrible events for themselves. The visuals alone deliver an impactful experience that drives along with the gameplay. Mix that with the sound design, and you've got an experience that drives the game home. Remember all those times where you've been alone someplace, like in your house, and then you hear a sound you can't describe nor want to find out where it came from? Or, at this rate, what it came from? You'll get that same feeling of dread from hearing the ambience in this game. Throughout the events of the game, the sound design is expertly crafted to drive the sense of immersion and the emotions the game wants you to feel. In the beginning of the game, the sounds are tense and loud, driving the horror atmosphere to the max, when you don't exactly know what your primary threat is yet. The creaks under your feet as you walk through the house help build the atmosphere. The sound effects even differ when you walk over different materials, or even knock some tin cans over. At later moments of the game, you'll encounter certain biohazards that when messed with, either by walking over or touching it, will create disgusting sounds. It's hard to think what will make a sound in this game, if not realistic to its real-life counterpart. Even so, every sound has a sharp, accurate feel to them. An example of this would be the weapons you obtain in the game. A pistol doesn't produce a concussive bang like in Call of Duty or Battlefield. It has a sharp, quick snap to make the reload of each round feel quick. A shotgun produces the sound of a nice bang, followed with a modest pump and an empty shell falling to the ground. Even the special weapon, the Albert O&R, delivers a clean metal slide sound, making it feel like the proper anti-bioweapon it is. The developers knew how to scale each weapon's power and portray it with the sounds it produces when firing them off. Speaking of firing the weapons off, remember those enemies I was talking about? Every time you pump a round into the Molded, it delivers an excellent feeling of feedback. Each bullet, or shot from the burner, crunches, smushes, and delivers the punch to the enemy that even you can feel sometimes. When the Molded fight back, their claws rip through you with a sharp, piercing sound that will make you jump. These sounds even carry over to the Bakers. They'll squish and crunch under the impact of your bullets, adding to the visual effects, making you really feel the damage that you're dealing to them. This is all wrapped up in a nice neat bow with the soundtrack. The soundtrack for this game was designed to mix with the Foley and visuals. The early game starts off quiet, with little to no music. Then when Mia attacks you for the first time, it turns into high-pitched strings to capture the horror vibe. Eventually, you'll get more music that centers around the scares, intense moments, and boss fights. And of course, This wouldn't be a true Resident Evil game without the safe room theme. A theme created eerily to tell the player, you're safe, but you're going to have to go back out there eventually. But for now, relax a little bit. And let's definitely not forget the incredible main theme that generated the hype from E3 all the way up to its release. A video game wouldn't be a game without its mechanics, a set of rules to follow, and the abilities given to the player. Resident Evil returns to its original formula in this new installment with a few modernization tweaks and ideas. You'll make your way through a manor full of unexpected traps, puzzles, and monsters, infected with a biological, weaponized virus. Since you enter with just your wit and, well, your loafers, you have to scavenge to defend yourself from the threat trying to take a nice bite out of you. Items are limited, even in this case, of the game's hardest difficulty, having saves being limited and placed throughout the game as cassette tapes. With this limit to your items, you have to figure out the best use for them and when to use them. Is it better to heal now or later? Is it best to run away from Jack or maybe spend a few pistol rounds to knock him down? This item management is also paired with a limited inventory system. You'll have to figure out what the best items are to take in a situation you might be entering ahead. Walking around the manor has never felt better, especially with the game's first big modernization. Resident Evil 7 was a very virtual reality focused game for the PSVR, so the entire thing is in a first-person perspective. This does not hinder the game at all. Instead, it helps maximize the horror elements by making the player take a seat directly in front of the action. The controls are tight and responsive, making every accidental misstep and eventual death a lesson for the player to learn and overcome to eventually come back stronger. The gunplay is also spectacular. The game doesn't push the idea of a weapon blowback too seriously in order to make everything feel fair when a shot is missed due to the enemy's movement patterns. Speaking of which, every enemy, even the molded, have pattern sets that you can learn and master, but will always feel a little bit unpredictable in a sense. If you need to take a break from all this horrific action and suspense, there's always the clever puzzles the game hides, exploration of the beautifully creepy manor, and the save rooms. These rooms act as a safe place to hide temporarily from the action. It allows you to save, switch and store items from your inventory with the storage crate, and even relax and read some information you'll find throughout the game. Exploration of the manor and areas you will be in will often reward you with extra items and even some special items. Anti-coins are collectibles found throughout the game that you can collect and spend on items like steroids, a health booster, stabilizers, a reload speed up, and the Mag 7, a powerful handgun. Along with the coins are information collectibles detailing the backstory of the game along with certain hints, and the Mr. Everywheres, hidden bobbleheads that you can destroy. Finding all of each item awards you bonus items on your next playthrough, like the Essence of Defense from the Mr. Everywheres, an item that boosts your defense. Lastly, puzzles offer a nice challenge, and while not the most diverse, they'll still make you think and ponder how everything goes together. These elements, along with the visuals, sound design, and story, complete this game and make it a masterpiece of sorts. But not everyone likes to sit through a multi-winning Oscar movie. With all these elements, you have to ask yourself in the end, did I enjoy my experience? When I picked up this game, back in my sophomore year of high school, I felt like I knew what I was getting into, and man was I wrong. At the time, the horror genre made me skittish, and for a long time in my life, I was actually incredibly afraid of zombies. But something drove me to this game, and it didn't make me disappointed. When I played through the game for the first time, I was ready for the challenges ahead and pushed my fears aside. I went through the campaign in about 6 hours, and I enjoyed it all. While some moments had me on my toes or made me feel like I was doing the wrong thing, I enjoyed every second of it. After picking it up over this most recent winter break, the same emotions fled back to me, and the game was a bit easier not only to complete and avoid certain conflicts, but made me understand more about the story and the overall beauty of the game. The mechanics make the game feel satisfying to play, and with only a few errors, made deaths feel like a lesson to be learned from. The gunplay made me think through my ammo management, and the fights drove me to figure out better methods of dealing with the threat in front of me. The story drew me in, and the music drove it home. And at the end of all of it, for the first time with any video game, I said, let's do that again. I was determined to get the achievements and defeat the extra challenges, like beating the game in under 4 hours, and this most recent time, I did it all. While I haven't fully completed the game yet, I have 45 out of 58 achievements. I've beaten the game in 3 hours with only healing 2 times, and opening the storage crate only 3 times. And Madhouse, the game's hardest difficulty, is set in my sights, along with getting all the achievements. So, considering the game had such an influence with its elements that it made me want to try harder in achieving the best out of it, I'm pretty sure I enjoyed it. A lot. And I dare to say, it's probably my favorite horror game ever. Resident Evil 7 is scary, intense, atmospheric, and an overall masterpiece that encourages you to explore its most diverse elements of visual and sound design while enjoying the satisfying mechanics and unsettling story of the Baker family and your missing wife in the Louisiana swamps. The only nitpick I had with the game is the diversity of the molded enemies and how limited it was, but other than that, the game is close to perfect and honestly, a good start to the Resident Evil line of games, especially with its unmentioned DLC, and with Resident Evil 2 right around the corner. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard gets my score of a 9.5 out of 10.